Hello everybody, my name is Claudia Brützel and I will open my master course Smart Tourism Research and Application Trends this year with an interview. It is great that I can talk to two really outstanding analysts and researchers, and we will try to have a look at the current situation in April 2020 in times of Corona crisis and look at the situation in the tourism industry, especially from a travel tech perspective and a data perspective. So I'm very happy to welcome you, Philip Wolf, one of the most well-known analysts in the travel industry and founder of Phocus, Wright. I researched that in 1994. It was written somewhere on the website, and the number one source of market analysis in the tourism industry. Hello, Philip. Hello to the US. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I wanted to tell you one story because we did start Focus Right pre-web, right? So the web didn't really start to 95, so you had to be half crazy back then.
Yeah.
And then Travelocity and Expedia launched in 1996, and we're sitting around, the analysts, trying to describe these new entities, and people were having difficulty calling them travel agencies. And I said, they're a travel agency. Well, they're not really a travel agency. I said, they're an online travel agency. Okay, and everyone said, okay. And that's how OTA was born. It really was a big deal. And at that day, online travel was a $0 billion industry.
I know. Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, thank you very much for this for this story, Philip. And I also want to introduce Rodolfo Baggio from Bocconi University in Milan, a very well-known researcher in the academic world, a data scientist and a network analyst. And he also is a very outstanding critical thinking man. So thanks for being here, Rodolfo.
Oh, thank you for having me there. I mean, I was born a bit before, as you know, more or less like Philip. In those times, I didn't deal with tourism. I was working in information technology industry, so I started in '78. So I've seen everything has happened from the technology point of view, from there to now, and it's been quite an interesting period.
Yeah.
I would like to start at the moment in this time. Sasha Lobo, which is a writer, and he said last week, we are in a time of uncertainty at the moment, and what we could not deal with is this period of uncertainty. We don't know. We want someone to do something. And this is also what I experience when I talk to my students. They are studying tourism management and they are really concerned about what is going on and what is about their future, what they should learn or what is going back and forth, and if they should stay forever at the university and take a seat there or whatever. So we discussed that often in the last weeks. And I would like to start with my first question. Therefore, I choose the motto for my course. Normally, I am choosing a motto, and for this course starting next week, I choose the motto, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. It's from Paul Romer, economist and policy entrepreneur, 2018 Nobel Prize co-recipient. I'm sure you know him. And I really like this this quote. What comes in your mind, Philip, when you think about this quote?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is your students, probably half of what your students will learn won't be useful and the other half will be, but the problem is we don't know which half is which, right? So you have to keep on studying. So yeah, you hear this a lot about in a crisis, there's opportunities in disguise. But I have to say, it takes an extraordinary amount of leadership. Like, I'm more of a business guy, so for a CEO to manage his team or her manager team during a crisis and look for opportunities is quite an extraordinary skill. You know, it's very, very difficult, especially right now look, no one can look you in the eye now and tell you when travel is going to come back in an unfettered, unbridled manner. Nobody can do that. So you have to hunker down. You have to watch your cash really, really, really carefully. So it's difficult to wake up in the morning and say, oh, well, let's look for the hidden opportunities, unless you have unlimited money. But they are there, and it takes an extraordinary skill. I'll let Rodolfo comment on that, but we should get a little bit more into how you look for those opportunities in a crisis such as this one.
Mm-hmm. It depends on where you are. Rodolfo, what do you think?
Well, it depends on what you mean by opportunity, It's usual. No, I was, but by the way, I was saying some other people, I had a kind of webinar a few hours ago. So obviously the discussion was more or less the same. And yeah, I mean, I agree with Philip. It takes a very strong, how to say, personality to be able to see opportunity, because mainly in a world like tourism, I mean, for other industry can be a bit different. But tourism is really to zero. I mean, other industry may have suffered, may have closed a bit, but they're still trying to do something. Tourism is zero. I mean, we've never seen something like that. We've seen big problems, we've seen crises, but always in a way limited to either an area or a period, and we're very limited. Now we are zero. I mean, I was looking at some data about the occupancy of the hotels in the major Italian cities, and now it's zero practically. There is no one around.
Other than medical housing and emergency.
Yeah, but 1%, 0.5%, something like that. You don't even record those. And no, the thing I was telling them is that if an opportunity can be found, is to be found in preparing for what will be next. I mean, there are, mainly in Italy and in Europe, more differently from the States, it's a bit different situation. Our industry is 95% tiny, little, small company. We've been telling them for the last 20 years to do something, to learn, to approach the digital world or something like that. And the typical answer was, we have no time to do, because we have to do. Now what I was telling them, well, look, now you are forced to have time because you can't do anything else. So if you're using well this time to try to understand at what you've done, to what can be improved, made more efficient, how can you use different tools and so on, you will use well this time, otherwise it's wasted.
Yeah.
And that I think is the waste of the crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sit on 6 boards of directors on 3 continents in the travel industry, and I advise 10 more companies. So a lot of CEOs and senior management teams in the last few years would always say, I don't have any bandwidth, I can't do this, I can't do that. So I tell everybody now, if you want to see, is to take out, make your no bandwidth list, all the things, and get them done. And some leadership teams are doing that, but most are not. And then they realize that the reason they didn't do them before was not because of no bandwidth, it was because of something else. So the famous Warren Buffett expression that when the tide goes way out, you can see who is swimming naked. In other words, you could see who was exposed, you could see who was weak, you could see who had issues, and I think that's a big issue right now. But it's important what Rodolfo said. If you had things you weren't getting done, you better be getting those done now. I have I mentor 4 young female CEOs in the travel industry, all less than like 10 employees, and one of the gals is finally moving her technology reservation system from an old one to a new one. It's great. Another one who does tours sources different components of tours and trips from different suppliers and vendors all over the world. And there's a lot of those suppliers that she tried to do business with before coronavirus, but they would never return her phone call or never. So she's using this time to build a database and start a set of relationships with an expanded group of travel suppliers. And they're all calling her back and they're all answering her emails.
Now, yes.
So there's a lot of good things you can do right now with that time, but yeah, you gotta do it.
It's very good that you mentioned that. I'm mentoring a young woman from Iran. She won also a prize and she wanted to come to ITB and things like that. So everything was locked down before in Iran. And I always tell her, build up your network. And she's so successful with that. She has the dream of an app, still an idea, where which is for people who cannot travel. And this is right now the moment for this idea. And she gets a lot of connections now all over the world. And her idea is really spread everywhere. Tour guides coming in and telling her, oh, we can just be part of your website and doing things, running around with the phone. It's not rocket science, but she really got the point. Yeah.
Have you seen what the Faroe Islands is doing?
No.
Yeah.
It's great. So
It's a wonderful.
they have a new innovative approach to virtual tourism, right? So instead of sitting in your chair and on a computer and looking at beautiful videos, what they do is with a controller, you connect with a real person in the Faroe Islands. So the two examples I saw is somebody hiking and somebody in a helicopter. So you actually pay to connect with that real live person. And then if she's taking a hike, you say, go forward, go backwards, stop, I want to look at this. So you're really like two humans connected, real time experiences. I just thought it was a brilliant innovation coming out of a very rare destination.
This is a really good point. This is exactly the idea of this woman from Iran, connecting the people and doing something together. So I will look this up and give her the tip. Thanks therefore. So
Yeah.
the preparation thing I think is a very good point. But what kind of advice would you give students at the moment to be prepared for, let's say, after the crisis, and what could students do at the moment? Do you have an advice for the students?
I mean, a couple of things I'm telling the young people is stop being so dramatic and emotional. There's a lot of people, sometimes I join a call and it takes 10 minutes before we can actually start the call. So I tell them that you're lucky, you're getting free training on crisis management. So calm down and watch and listen and observe other leaders, what they're doing, listen to interviews, read. So that's my best advice. My business, Phocus, Wright, was almost destroyed after 9/11. It was really, really bad for us in the United States. And I'm so proud of my team from 19 years ago. They're at all different companies, watching them manage this crisis. They're just a little better at it, not because they're any smarter necessarily, but because we all went through this before. So students should really be like a sponge. Learn as much as you can. Watch what leaders are doing, because you know what? They will have more crises in their lifetime.
Yeah.
It's never the last one. That's the only thing I've learned. It's never the last one.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
I agree. And one thing, if you want to be more, let's say, practical, is just to get more involved in a couple of topics that will be after this period of very high relevance. One is technology, without any doubt. So one thing we see now, for example, that people are forced to use technology, even those that didn't want, or even those that had doubts on the usefulness and so on. I've seen some numbers of the increase of traffic on the network that are astonishing. These will stay, because once people get used to use some tools, then they will go on using. So either you will be able to take advantage of these things, or you're back. You will pay much more than before, I think.
Yeah.
And the other thing is understand how you can use all of the information you find around. Develop your own critical skills, your own capability to understand whether certain things are reliable or not, and so on, because now you have time to go around and see, and you have also many jobs.
Yeah.
I think connected with that is take office space. Every travel company in the world is renegotiating their leases, right? All you have to say is, I'm in the travel and tourism industry, help, and you got pretty much get help every time. But with everybody working remotely now, these companies realize they don't need all the square footage or the square meters that they used to have. I was just on the phone this morning. The bigger company, they have 2,000 employees at headquarters. They're going to negotiate down the space, and they only need maybe for 1,000 people, and they're going to rotate all the employees permanently. Yeah. Sometimes in the office, sometimes remotely. So that's a huge, for the landlords, it's going to be a huge change.
Yeah.
For sure.
Also for certain sectors of this industry. For example, I think that many things on the events, congresses, and so on will change. I was using an example of a friend of mine a few months ago. He took a plane, went to a place, stayed there for 2 nights, to give a 10-minute speech. Now, this is something that probably we knew already.
Half of it will be over.
It will be over. You don't go there 3 days for 10-minute speech. I mean, you can do online. We've seen that it works. Today we had this event with a number of online presentation and so on, which was about tourism and technology and so on. More than 1,000 people followed. Mm-hmm. I mean, something that it's difficult to find them in a standard event.
Yeah. And it's true. People in the meetings and events industry, you can always tell, because you have a lot of these discussions, and then every night people say, "Oh, we've been told this before, that video is going to replace events, but people need to get together and they need the visceral connection, so it'll all come back." It will not all come back, and you need these crisis moments to make the change. The example I use is, remember Blockbuster, when they became so big, a lot of people said that they would reduce attendance in the cinemas, but they never did. Yeah. But then Netflix came along and they killed Blockbuster, and attendance in the cinemas went way down. So see, it's an evolution, and eventually the changes get made. Mm-hmm. Same thing with corporate travel.
Yeah.
I know
that you can do in half an hour online instead of traveling for days.
Look, if your biggest competitor gets on a plane to visit your biggest customer, okay, then you might still get on the plane, but as Rodolfo says, for every one of those trips, there's 100.
Yeah.
You don't really need to.
Mm. I think meeting personally will getting more exclusive. So, because we are more effective if we do everything online, but sometimes meeting personally is. No, you don't think so?
I don't think you can have a 100% substitution. But you will have for sure a substitution of things that so I would say useless, something like that. or things that may be better done online. For example, transferring certain type of content can be done better online.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you can prepare things and have a real people-to-people meeting where people are already prepared. They don't need, something like
Yeah.
that. So you're much more effective and you can save the social side, which is important, obviously. But this will mean anyway a reduction of many of those activities.
And I love to remember these things. Peter Drucker, the famous business writer, said that the tragedy in a crisis is not the crisis. It's looking at the crisis with yesterday's logic or yesterday's lenses, right? So remember, in the early 1900s, when the telephone was invented, people said, I don't like the telephone, it's impersonal, I want to write a letter. And then, and it just goes. And then email comes along, and they said, well, I don't, and then chat came along. But anybody that denies this logical evolution of the way humans interact it's crazy. And for sure, COVID-19 is the expression I use is it's triggering accelerated disruption. All these, remember before coronavirus, there were companies that were already having difficulty keeping up with disruption.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you were having difficulty before keeping up with disruption, you, as we say in American English, you ain't seen nothing yet, because that disruption's being accelerated now. That's what happens at moments like this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So my students in the University for Sustainable Development, Philip, they always think and discuss at the moment, now we're on zero, so when recovery starts, we have the biggest chance ever to put everything in a sustainable mode. Do you think that this is possible to, let's say, restart something more sustainable? If we think about transportation, about flying, about, let's say, waste, everything.
I'm skeptical that going to zero will automatically be a catalyst for sustainable trends in travel and tourism. Sustainability is a luxury, right? Like early years in China, they were growing so fast and tens of millions of people were moving into the middle class. They had a lot of air pollution, right? To get rid of air pollution is a luxury, right? So what I'm trying to say here is I would not assume that because we're starting at zero, this will be a tremendous opportunity for sustainability to increase its mind share and market share. And I think there's in some cases, yes, but I think there's a pretty good argument the opposite will happen, where the economy is so devastated, is so annihilated, that we need to start getting the economy going again and getting the gears moving again. And that's what I think.
There's conflicts with certain ideas of sustainability. I'm always been like Philip a bit skeptical, also because I've never well understood what people mean by sustainable. I mean,
you are completely right.
There is no idea what it is. However, I think that some things may be changing in a number of industries. For example, mainly in this period, there are many small producers that are gaining visibility online, and this will stay. Many niche, producers for a number of different things, from agriculture to other things.
Also culture, Rodolfo, culture things are changing.
Yeah. Because they've been able to understand the moment and to use well the tools they have, basically.
There's a small business person in the state of Vermont and she makes and sells online very healthy grains for bread. Some of them she calls ancient grains. And her business is booming right now with people baking at home. The same thing with companies that sell seeds for fruits and vegetables and lettuce. So this is part of the transformation we're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So let me go to my last question. We said half an hour, so it's very interesting with you. But I would like to keep the time for you also. My last question is about data and about using technology and about the attitude. So I think we talked a little bit about that. We are forced to use at the moment a lot of technology. Even people who are not used to it are forced to do everything online and by telephone and so on. Do you think that the attitude is changing and that we also, with a changing attitude, we also have a different, let's say, usage data? The keyword for me is open data, as a contrary to proprietary data. Yeah. Do you think on the business level that we are changing our way how we deal with data, because we all need data sources to recover, to go ahead? And on the other hand, do we personally change our attitude to data and to technology?
Of course, because the companies that are more successful today and will continue to be more successful are the companies that gather and collect data in some amazing ways. And then you have to make a concerted effort to collect it, right? Just because it passes through your business or passes in front of your eyes doesn't mean you're collecting. So you got to collect it. Number two, you have to organize your data. I'm trying to speak in easy language. Organize it, database it, get it structured so that it's easy to use. And then number three, you actually have to use it, right? So the companies that are doing those three things are winning right now.
Klar.
And customers like them. So sometimes you adopt technology by doing business with companies that behave a certain way. So that's why Netflix is growing like crazy, and Zoom and Amazon, pioneers in intelligent leveraging of data. And then the marketplace sorts out, because then the competitors that weren't using data that much are going to get weaker and weaker. And any company now with a weak balance sheet, it's tough times. So, and I think the way you get to strength is largely about intelligently using data, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Rodolfo, you want to add something?
These are two questions. The first one is on the attitude, and I remember the only example I know of a situation like this one, which is similar to this thing, is when we several years ago we had, at least in Italy, but also in Europe and in many other countries, an incredible increase in the use of e-commerce after the first low-cost companies came around. Mm-hmm. You know, the idea was, if you want to fly from Milan to London spending €5, you can only do online. Okay, so people get used to use online tools, and then find it's easy, it's effective, and so you use also for other things. And now this is what's happening. I mean, I've seen a number says in Italy in the last 3 weeks, more than 15% of people that have never bought anything online have started to buy online, because it's the only thing that they can do. Yeah. And this attitude will stay, because they find that it's easier, more effective, more efficient, probably not for everything, but for a number of things.
Convenient, yeah.
Yeah, and so many will need to understand that this is happening. The second part is referring to data, and I agree with Philip. Opening data or not is a totally different. It's a totally different thing. Here, I think that probably government could play a good game in trying to get at least some information open and so on. We have seen some examples, some good examples. We also need to understand that this is mainly for our European and Italian industry, that most of them are too small to be able to do this type of thing.
Mm.
They don't have enough resources, that they don't have enough skilled people. So the only possibility is to group with others and have a minimum of critical mass to be able to collect data, to restore, to analyze, to get good information from the data and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So this probably will happen, because without that one, it will be difficult to run any business in the future.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So, thank you very much. I have no more questions at the moment, but I would like to leave a last words to Philip, a last word to Rodolfo, if you want to add something at the moment as a last sentence.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to tell all of your students that they need to fasten their seatbelts really tightly right now. And many, many people are saying, don't worry, we'll get through this. We always do get through this. And I know maybe I sound a little hard, but that's not necessarily true. So it's time to be really strong and really tough. And as I said, learn everything you can, be smart, watch your expenses and all these things, because you will need to do that to get through this without being too many scars.
Yeah, I think so. You're right. Thank you very much for that advice. Rodolfo, do you want to add something?
More or less in the same line. I mean, we cannot take for granted anything we see. Okay, we've seen that something very, very tiny little things can totally disrupt the whole world. So, and we'll see. Unfortunately, we'll see many more of these crises in the future. Hopefully, not so big, but we'll see. So, the best suggestion I can give to your students is get prepared. Do whatever you can to increase your basic competencies, your basic skills, because those will make a difference in the future. Okay, and basic means technology, data, or something like that. I mean, but the foundations, when those are solid, then you can build something. Otherwise, you build on sand.
Mm.
And a couple of waves can throw you out.
That's true. That's true. And dealing the uncertainty, yeah. This is getting used to the uncertainty, because I think it starts now. And as you said, we will see more crises. Crises are coming. Then I think we have to get used to live with a certain uncertainty, and there will be no person who can help you. It's just yourself. You have to get to use to help yourself. I think this is the point. Yeah.
Try to be as adaptive and flexible as you can, because that's the only thing that will save.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what they say? It's like if a tree doesn't sway in the wind,
Yeah.
the branches will break. So Rodolfo's right. We need to bend more, be flexible.
More yoga. Do more yoga. Thank you.
Conceptually, yeah.
Thank you.